if you or I were president of the United States, so if you or I were president of the United States, and someone presented to us, to you and I, each of us, credible evidence that there was an alien presence interacting with planet Earth, would we not create a commission of probably the very wise people, the smartest people around, to investigate this?
Yes, definitely.
And if we were president and nobody ever presented this credible evidence, never brought it up, what would we do? We probably wouldn't do anything at all. So the question is what Harry Truman did. Harry Truman was presented with this credible evidence, and he created Majestic 12. That's what he did. He created Majestic 12. And I think that was a logical thing to do at the time. It was the 12 people chosen were patriots. Those were real patriots in those days, real patriots, the wisest minds around.
Right.
And it has evolved. Obviously, many of those have passed on. Some of those that took their place have passed on. It still exists. I have no idea what it's called today, or what its actual structure is. But every president since then, from Eisenhower to the present one, Trump has had to have some knowledge or dealings of some sort with the idea of there being a government above our government.
Yes.
And actually, President Clinton at one time said publicly that he said this to Sarah McClendon, a reporter. He said, "I have concluded there is a government above my government. So there is a government above our government, above the president."
Mm-hmm.
It exists today.
No question. When people look at the scenario and they look at the JFK presidency, they may wonder why he had this knowledge of the alien presence and why he wanted to share that, the UFO file with the Soviets at the time. So let's get into that here.
And we have to sort of go back and find out, trace why JFK would have this information. He was in Office of Naval Intelligence in the 1940s.
Right.
That's where I think he got the first information, in the 1940s, after of the alien presence. And then there is the incident. Stan Friedman, who's a brilliant researcher.
Oh yes, he's incredibly informative, and we've had some remarkable episodes with him here on this show.
Yeah, well, he's, I always drop everything when he's talking. He's he's a fascinating person.
Oh, yes.
Knows so much. But maybe 10 years ago, Stan Friedman went to Harvard University, took the file there in the library on Donald Menzel. Donald Menzel was a professor of astronomy there. He was a foremost public skeptic of the UFOs and everything like that. Whenever the media wanted someone to make a statement debunking all this, they would go to him. And so he wanted to examine the file that Harvard would have. And so he was looking at the file, and he came upon a file within the file, the JFK file. Well, John F. Kennedy had said. He said, well, as he recounts, he said, well, this is rather interesting, as only Friedman would say in a sort of, his drawl manner of speaking. This is rather interesting, and he opened it, and there was a letter there from Menzel to John Kennedy in 1957, in which, and at that point, Kennedy was a U.S. Senator, but he was also on the Board of Overseers of Harvard University, saying, when you receive the proper clearance, you have obviously, as a U.S. Senator, he had security clearance, but there were security clearances even above U.S. senators. Those on the Senate Intelligence Committee have clearances higher than the other senators inside the Senate because they are on the Intelligence Committee. He said when you get the proper clearance, which he thought was probably imminent, I want to brief you on my activities with NSA, et cetera, and so forth. And what Friedman read into that was possibly on the UFO and the alien presence and so forth. And it was startling to Friedman because the public persona of Donald Menzel was being the public critic of the idea that there was UFOs, or we were,
Oh yeah, he was the biggest UFO debunker there was.
And yet, when you got into his file, he was actually a member of Majestic 12.
Right.
He was one of the 12 people who knew everything. But his assignment apparently was to persuade the public there was nothing to this, and so there's no doubt that Menzel and John Kennedy interacted at different times subsequently to that. And when Kennedy became president, he wanted to pursue this subject. He knew enough about it at that time to to pursue this subject. So one of the first things President Kennedy did in June of 1961, he was just sworn in January, was to consolidate the activities of the CIA. He really made the CIA activities subservient to the Defense Department.
Mm-hmm.
He put the covert activities in the Defense Department. And one reason he did it, this, of course, was the Bay of Pigs was in April and had been badly burned by the CIA. Badly burned, and he actually fired Allen Dulles, the director of the CIA, because of how he had been misled because of the debacle of the Bay of Pigs invasion. So that was so in June he did that, and also a few months later, it may have been the same month, he initiated by letter a relationship with Khrushchev, the premier of the Soviet Union.
Right. His first year becomes a whirlwind, especially after the Bay of Pigs failure and the CIA having tried to basically obligate him into a Cuban invasion. And that plan was actually thoroughly cooked up in a previous administration. So it was a holdover. So it's quite the fast learning curve for the new president on that. Now, we know that Dulles was in the MJ12 group. So when he's fired as CIA director, JFK is probably making waves into that secret structure.
In my opinion, the way Kennedy approached this was he wanted to get greater knowledge of Majestic 12 and the whole subject piece by piece, sort of obliquely, rather than direct challenge to them. Okay, and so he made different speeches. He made a speech at American University in June of 1963, a famous speech about advocating peace, how important it was, overtures to. He had previously met with Khrushchev in Vienna. That was also in 1961, in which he sort of sounded out rapprochement between the two countries. Mm-hmm. Made that speech at American University.